Nothing's happened there. Welcome members and welcome members of the public. Thank you for coming along this afternoon. I've just reminded everyone that we're being recorded, so everyone's aware of that. The first thing that I wanted to do was before we begin the formal business on the agenda, I'd like to take a moment to pay our respects to the late Councillor John Duggan. As many of you in this chamber know, Councillor Duggan served on the former Selby District Council and the then North Yorkshire County Council. From the tributes made since his death, it's clear he was committed. He was a committed and hard-working councillor who was passionate about his community of Rickle. He campaigned tirelessly for road safety, and his death is a tragic loss for not only his family but the residents of Rickle he worked so hard for. We send our sincere condolences to his wife and family. Could I ask that members stand for a minute's silence? Thank you, members. Unfortunately, the Constitution doesn't allow us for public speaking in this session, but if anybody else wanted to speak about Councillor Duggan, they'd be very welcome. Thank you, everyone. So we move on to apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillors Crane, Davis, Brogan and Proud.
Thank you. So item 3 is minutes from the meeting held on the 26th of June. I just want to also highlight that the questions that were submitted to the executive from the parents on the homeschool transport action group have been answered, and those answers have been circulated. Does everyone agree with the minutes? Do I have a proposer for the minutes? Councillor Jordan, seconder. Councillor Duckett, all in favour? Moved, thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest. Can I take any declarations? Councillor Duckett.
I understand there's a lady here to make a statement on school transport. I sit on that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duckett. Councillor Parascos. Thank you both. They're noted. Yeah. So we move on to agenda item 5, which is public questions and statements. We have received one public statement. So if you would like to come forward, Mrs. Jones. Thank you. When you're ready, just take your time.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name's Ruth Jones. Some of you may know me as Dr. Ruth Walker. I'm a GP in Selby, a mother and a GP lead for health inequalities in this area. I work with council colleagues and schools on projects to improve children's health, wellbeing and attendance, and I sit on local care partnerships where poor rural transport and its impact on health comes up constantly. So there's more than a little irony that I'm here today fighting the consequences of this council's own transport policy. We talk about prevention, tackling disadvantage and the importance of school attendance, yet this policy is undermining those goals. Getting children safely and happily to school is prevention. Blocking it widens inequalities for already underserved rural communities, just as the council's own equality impact statement warned that it would. Let me share you an example of how absurd things have become. At Tadcaster Grammar, there's a pedestrian gate in daily use for 5 years, yet the council's mapping system missed it off. For many, or some, that incorrectly makes Millthorpe School in York marginally closer, as few as 6 metres, but enough for the computer to say no. Officers admit the error and promised it would be corrected when the system was next updated. Meanwhile, children this year are still being incorrectly denied transport. To make matters worse, we discovered yesterday that the system was updated just last week, and yet the missing gate is still missing. That means another year of children living in villages in and around Appleton Roebuck, for example, are about to be wrongfully denied transport. And this is not an isolated case of injustice. Mistakes in communication, double or more counting of available school places in neighbouring councils, and inaccurate route calculations are common. Families are dragged through appeals processes that are slow, stacked against them, and now even restrict councillors like Councillor Warnikin and Councillor Lee, who have stepped up in support, from fully representing parents in their hearings. This action undermines the principles of natural justice under which appeals should run, and quite honestly, it reeks of a council that are desperate to win at all costs. So I come here to say 2 things. First, thank you to those councillors who have stood shoulder to shoulder with parents. We are grateful. And second, to those of you who have stayed silent, please speak up. Don't sit on your hands hoping this will blow over. It won't. We need you to do your bit, stand up for North Yorkshire's children, and do your job so parents like me can get back to doing ours. The Tadcaster Grammargate injustice seems like a perfect place to start. And so the question I would like an answer to today is this: will this committee urgently write to the executive member and the chief executive this week to request that in cases like this where an error has been acknowledged, any child who was wrongly denied school transport should have that decision reversed without delay?
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Just a reminder to all that we're unable to debate this this topic after, but we do have an officer response after which you will be able to come back with a supplementary if you would like to. So if you want to deal with that, David.
This is a statement on behalf of CYPS officers. Thank you for your statement. The council adopted its home to school travel policy in July 2024 and have ensured that the policy is legally compliant and follows the DfE statutory guidance. This summer, the council has made arrangements for eligible children to access free transport. Many of these attend their nearest school and travel over the statutory walking distance. Parents of children who do not attend the nearest suitable school will, with places, remain responsible for their travel arrangements. The council has a mapping system used for admissions and transport purposes. This system has been used for many years and contains maps which are updated every year. The distance to the school is measured to the nearest entrance point, not always the main entrance, as defined by the council's system. As part of the home school travel appeals process this year, some parents in a small number of cases have identified issues where schools were using entrances or gates onto their sites which are not designated as such on the routing and mapping system used by the council for admissions and transport purposes. It is acknowledged that, for various reasons, a small number of schools may have started using entrance points which have not been designated, and that some schools may have stopped using identified entrance points that are recorded within the system. Changing any identified entrance points within the mapping software is a significant step. For every parent who may benefit from a change of this kind, there could be parents who would be disadvantaged from either an admissions or home to school travel policy perspective. To ensure fairness, the council believe it would not be appropriate to include or exclude individual entrances or gates at particular schools without fully considering changes across all school sites as part of the annual update to the mapping system. The council is therefore reviewing the identified entrance points with schools across this academic year to ensure the information included on the system is up to date. Any agreed changes to entrance points would be updated prior to the admissions round, which opens in September 2026, affecting school places in the academic year 2027 to 2028, and also in year applications from September 26. The council have taken this approach in order to ensure equity amongst all pupils. However, after any eligibility check has been undertaken, parents are able to use the council's appeal process to seek a review of the decision, including if they have exceptional individual circumstances that are significant enough to depart from the policy.
Thank you, David. Would you like a supplementary, Mrs. Jones?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, well, number one, what's the point of an appeals process of an error? You know, it's to find errors in one of the reasons is distance, and if you find an error, you should correct it. So what is the point of an appeals process if you don't do that? And as you may imagine, because I've done a lot of research, I have read the Department of Health, and not Health because I'm Health, Department of Education's guidelines on home to school transport, and there are a lot of references in that document. And even a whole section on fairness and getting it right. And particularly that's around application of policy and avoiding assumptions, for example. And there are multiple cases where officers' application of policy here does not adhere to these principles. Who is scrutinising the officers here? And is this level of scrutiny sufficient? I don't think so. Having watched on video, the scrutiny committee yesterday, it is clear to me that scrutiny falls well below the level that parents and voters expect.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. If I can just remind members now that if they wish to discuss this or answer, they can come in under the work programme, which is item 9, I think. Thank you so much.
And of course, I'll send the written response to you, and I'll get a response to those questions as well. I'll send them around to all members.
Firstly, a matter of just some information, please. What is the point in me and the rest of us coming here, listening to a resident addressing us in a letter, and then an officer responding? We might as well not be here, have we? Seems really odd system. Sure, she was speaking to us.
I completely understand your point, Councillor McCartney. There is an opportunity for any right to reply or any responses under the work programme if you wanted to then. Under the agenda item of the work programme, we can address the comments made by Mrs. Jones. So if you wanted to do that, then I don't make the rules. Councillor Lee,
can we bring that forward, Madam Chairman? I propose that we bring that item forward just for the benefit of the member of the public that's taken the time to come out and address us.
Okay, so we can move the work programme forward, but we would need a show of hands from members. If all members would indicate, are they happy to bring the work programme forward to discuss this matter now? Yeah, so that's passed. So we shall move item 9 up the agenda. Okay, thank you, David. So just a reminder that unfortunately there's no public speaking in this session, so we're just going to discuss the topic that's just been brought up. So who would like to start? Councillor Duckett?
And I'll have to leave the room.
Okay.
Member of the committees.
Okay.
I'll have to leave the room.
Okay. Okay, would anybody else like to address the topic? People. Councillor Lee, thank you.
Thank you. Someone got them up? That one on. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of residents in particularly Appleton Roebuck and Bilborough who have lobbied me on the home to school transport policy, and they are unhappy because of the change in policy. And I've been to several meetings where I've discussed the policy, and I've defended, the fact that I voted for the policy. So, I've never denied that, and I've given the reasons why I voted for the policy. But what I do think is that, the policy, when it's implemented, it has to work, and it has to be assessed on an individual basis. And if there are any inconsistencies, they have to be flagged up. And in this particular case, Dr. Jones has done a lot of research into the distances, and this particular entrance to the school, which hasn't been mapped, has been identified. And I know that it's a very well used entrance, and it's the school is accessed by, I would say, a large percentage of the student faculty every day via that particular entrance. So what I find is slightly disconcerting in the officer's response. They talk about equity, and I'm not sure how equitable it is, having had this flagged up, an identified entrance, and of course, Kirsty, as the Tadcaster member, you will be aware of this, to then say that as part of some wider assessment of equity across the entire county, and as to not upset anything else anywhere else, that we can't look at that individual error if it is an error, and the council has to assess it, but to say that it has to wait another 12 months to be considered to be included, I think that is, I think that's worrying, because obviously it does affect parents, and I'm, all for, if the policy is working and people are not eligible, then they're not eligible. But if people have found inconsistencies and it applies to them, then I think the authority needs to look at those cases, and it needs to speed up bringing forward any potential amendments to the mapping system, and any other errors that have been brought to light, any other inconsistencies as part of this this process, because I think it's with any policy, especially a large policy change like this, there are always going to be some teething trouble. There's always going to be devil in the detail, which throws up these edge cases, which, there's a lot of appeals that have been, a lot of people have appealed, there's been a lot of hearings, and some cases are perhaps stronger than others. Some have been upheld, some have been rejected. That's a matter for the appeals committee. But certainly, I think in cases like this, and I've seen, the senior officer respond on this particular issue, it's been acknowledged by the authority that this gate is there. I think we need some swifter action on that, personally. So I've given an assurance, Dr. Jez has written to me about this, and I have taken it up with the officers. And in light of today's information, I will certainly be pushing for a faster response time. And because I just feel that waiting a year as part of some wider strategy is not acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Just in the interest of transparency and honesty, the Tadcaster Grammar School obviously sits in my ward. I haven't had direct involvement with Mrs Jones's case. I know that Councillor Warnock and Councillor Lee have spoken on those appeals, so I just wanted to clear that up. Councillor Jordan?
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the things that's missing in all this is that the bean counters clearly haven't got children. When children are at a primary school, they form bonds with people, with other children their age, and that quite often carries on through the entire education system. In my ward, because of the closure of the high school, most of the children have going to Snaith, which is fine, and they've bonded with us. Not just at the school, but at the local cricket club. There's a big cricket club in Carlton, and then there's football teams as well. So they've got that bond. So then I've got families out in the far edge of my ward who have been told that their school their children can go to free is Goal Academy, which they've got absolutely no connection with at all. So them parents have bitten the bullet, and one family are paying £240 a month simply to send the children to the school that all their mates are going to. This seems to have been forgotten within that there's got to be a policy there about children being allowed to stay with their mates and not being split up from them. And it really saddens me and really annoys me. The second thing on the work programme, I'll bring it up now as we've got it here, is could this meeting be not run as a Teams meeting rather than us all coming here? We're not making any decisions whatsoever. And I think it would work just as well as a Teams meeting. But if you could take that away and discuss within your group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Warnock?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with most of what Councillor Lee has said. I do think that the policy is now showing a sense of arrogance that even though there's evidence to show it's not quite worked as it intended, they're still determined that we've got it right. And they definitely haven't got it right. We have sat in appeals, the two of us, and you get information back indicating we have not got this right. So I think there's nothing wrong with admitting that the consequences of a policy have highlighted things we hadn't considered. And if we can't change the policy for 12 months, could we actually change the appeals process? Because there's the exceptional circumstances that keep getting referred to in those appeals committees, we need to address, because some exceptional circumstances are pertinent to an individual situation. We can't categorize it and say that's it. You know, it's a well-being issue, or it's other things that we don't even consider the implications of people's working environment. You know, I had sat on one where we had a senior police officer and a member of the council itself working in child protection, who neither of them could change their work pattern, and yet we still didn't think that was exceptional circumstances. So I think we need to review the appeal process. We can do that rapidly. We can do it should be an ongoing process, reviewing that, learning from what the mistakes we've made. But I think this is a case where we have to say, let's go back to these particular parents and review the fact that gate exists and circumstances have changed. And I mean, if necessary, put them through the whole appeal process again, or at least just show common sense and change the decision that was made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warnock. And I think this is a very specific case that obviously impacts a number of families that are due to go to grammar school. So I'm looking for, does anybody else wish to, sorry, Councillor Shaw, right?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points. One, I don't think we should go to Teams meetings because it's important that the public can come, attend and speak to us. And if you're in a little box in your back room with your dog and whatever, it's just not the same. And I think we need to steer clear of Teams meetings. But on the school transport, I can understand the difficulties of individual families. There aren't any in my ward. They just go to the schools where they are on the walk, unless you're my mate's kid and he drives them everywhere, even if it's 50 yards down the road. But I think we've debated this at least 3 times at county, and the people who keep telling me here at this meeting that they fully support the members of the public and the parents and the people who've lobbied them turn up at County Hall and stick the hand up to oppose any changes. And unless those people are going to change their mind when they're being whipped, it is utterly pointless debating it, and it's giving people false hope that they're going to do something. Because on the 3 occasions they've had the opportunity, even the ones who spoke out in the paper saying, I will not do this, changed their mind. So we need an assurance that if it comes back to council, they're going to stand up and stick to their guns. History proves they don't.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Right, Councillor Lee, would you like to come back?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I think there's a subtle difference here between supporting the policy as a strategic policy in terms of the council's fiscal position, and as a member highlighting inconsistencies in the application and the detail of the policy. I voted for the policy because there was no other policy put forward to deliver the savings that the council needs to make, and we have to take difficult decisions. So I voted for the policy. But this policy, as with any other policy, has to work. And when things within the policy, maybe it's the way it's written, it's not worded correctly, it's ambiguous, those are the things that we need to refine over time. Now, the authority has given an assurance that there will be a review of the policy, and I would welcome participation in that review. But I think between now and the review, I think inconsistencies that have been highlighted today by Dr. Walker, such as this gate and other things that I'm sure other families will raise with the authority, we need to be proactive. We can't just say, well, we'll deal with that in 12 months, we'll deal with that whenever. I think residents deserve action on things that are inconsistent and are throwing up difficulties. or confusion. So that is different for me as a member lobbying for that particular type of action than supporting the overall strategic policy.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. I think my own view is that we are in a position where a larger number of people on this council support this policy than don't. And those of us that don't will have to accept that until that changes. But on this particular case, I think this is a case of natural justice. Someone has come up with evidence, and it is evidence, that the policy is wrong, or that the interpretation of the policy in this particular area is wrong. To my mind, if you come up with that evidence in any other forum or in any other hearing, that would be accepted and a decision would be made based on that evidence. I find it astounding that people take evidence to these appeals and it is effectively ignored. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Packham, and I agree, Councillor Lee, that we're discussing two very different things here. It isn't just the policy; it's actually what's been brought in front of us today. So I'm looking for recommendations as to what we do next. What would members like to do? Any actions at all? Councillor Shawright?
Well, last time we tried to do something, we were told by the officer after he scuttled round talking to Daniel Harriet County, I couldn't do anything other than send a letter to the executive member, which I think we've already agreed to do. I'm quite happy to do that, and I'm quite happy that we could follow Arnold's point that I think it might be to make again in looking at a review of the appeals process. So I'm quite happy to take Arnold's lead on it, but we were told before we can't do anything because we're merely consultative.
And I think my understanding of the discussion that's happened is that we're not looking at the policy. It's not the discussion on the policy, it's the discussion on the appeals process, and actually very specifically what Mrs Jones has brought to us today, which involves one school that impacts actually a number of families. Councillor Warnock, do you have a recommendation?
Well, it's along the lines of what Steve just said, and in that we need to maybe go back earlier, as soon as, well, straight away. I think that's a fair comment. So we're going to go back straight away, having had this highlighted to us. I'm not absolutely clear that the local authority has held their hands up and said we made a mistake. If they have, then we definitely need to go back straight away. But I think one of the questions we need to establish is, have they admitted fault here? And if so, ask them to review these particular cases. But on the back of that, look at the experience they've had over the last X number of months with the appeals process. And I mean, I was sat there and you know, can I just say something? You know that I don't find it easy sitting there and saying nothing. But in those appeals, I've been, like other councillors, have been gagged when it comes to questions. And the idea was to save time. And it makes a farce of it. I lean across to the parent and say, will you ask this? I'm asking the question once, they ask it a second time. It increases the amount of time spent. But this is the way it's evolved. They've realised something's happened. And then the appeals process has been changed to restrict members' involvement. I do feel that process needs to be a positive change, not a negative change like that. So can I suggest that we take account of what's been raised today specifically, and we approach the local authority and ask them to review the appeals process and assess this particular case with immediate effect?
Thank you. Councillor Lee, can I just refer to you again, because I believe you did say that you had seen the evidence that North Yorkshire had admitted a wrongdoing, or via email, or...
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just cautious about saying too much on an individual case, but I think, you know, Dr. Walker has made significant representations to senior officers on this matter. I'm aware of those representations, and I obviously, with the information that came to light a couple of days ago regarding this year's applications and this gate not being included, I think I'm concerned about that because it impacts upon my residents, and I'm sure you would be as well, Kirsty. And of course, Dr. Walker's highlighted this. So I'm working on that as the local member, and I'm sure that other members will have cases similar to this or of a slightly different nature, which all refers to the policy. I think in terms of what Councillor Warnock is saying, I I wouldn't want the committee to waste time or just get sort of stonewalled on requests that are made. I think there's a process here. Obviously, we've had a lot of debate prior to the new policy being implemented. I believe there's been a post-implementation review. So I think it might be more valuable at this stage for individual members to take up cases relating to the policy like this one, which I'm doing. But for the committee, if they want more information, I'd be interested to have the officers here and talk about this post-implementation review, talk about the feedback they've been getting from members of the public, and perhaps we could request more information about the remit of the appeals panel and how that is formulated and how it interacts in terms of the information that's put forward, what the terms of reference, the remit, like you said earlier, Arnold, about the sort of the circumstances in which an appeal could be upheld, and you've referred to those specific cases. So I think between now and whenever the full review of the policy might be, I think that would give this committee a bit more understandings of the mechanics of how officers apply these policies behind the scenes, and of course then how they're applied in practice to the people who are involved. I think just going back perhaps and sort of saying, can you do this? Can we have a review? I just don't think we've got the power to affect that. But I think what we do have the power to do is avail ourselves of the opportunity to have officers here and to equip ourselves with more knowledge about the process. So then in the future, when we are talking about a review, if there are any areas that members feel need to be reviewed, then we'll have that knowledge, and I think we can speak with a bit more authority on it.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody else want to speak? Councillor McCartney.
Yeah, just generally on the whole policy, which I did vote against along with all sensible people. The reality is I haven't had an issue with this at all. My ward is the heart of Yorkshire. We've got the East Riding on one side, South Yorkshire on the other side, and West Yorkshire, and all our nearest schools are cross-border. The catchment school was Brayton here, but because I started telling residents about it from March, 19 months ago, actually, when we first found out about it, everybody was on track and they've all gone to the nearest schools. And I'm delighted to say I've only had one person who's wanted to continue to go to Brayton. I explained to her she'd have to pay, and she's gone to Snaith, I think, now, because it's free. And by letting people know about stuff earlier, you can avoid the mess we seem to be in some areas.
Thank you, Councillor McCartney, and thank you for everyone's comments. I think it is, thanks for the clarity on the two areas. I think there are real specifics with Mrs Jones' case and Tadcaster Grammar School, which I agree on with you, Councillor Lee, in that actually local members, we can support and help and push things through and ask questions. Would I take it as a recommendation then that we will invite officers to perhaps the November ACC to discuss the PIR that we could ask questions for? Any? Yeah, Councillor Warnican.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, because the more we learn about it, the better. But I would at least want this committee to offer some support to Councillor Lee in his campaign on this specific case and acknowledge that the situation. Otherwise, why bring it to this committee? So I would like to propose that we actually support Councillor Lee in his efforts to resolve this case.
Thank you, Councillor Warnock, and I'm not entirely sure how we would.
The committee could show their support. I'd again want a show of hands from that the committee generally does support, and Councillor Lee in this case. And as Councillor Lee said, obviously each councillor can also support their own residents outside of this committee. Also, I'm happy to invite the officers to November meeting, and then we can get more information, then we can decide something then.
Okay, because if I can ask members if they're in support of this committee supporting Councillor Lee in his endeavours with residents that are impacted by the issue that's been specifically discussed here. So all in favour? Oh, sorry, propose seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Jordan. All in favour? I think that's unanimous.
Sorry, can we do it?
Sorry, all in favour? Sorry, it wasn't quite unanimous.
Abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Lunn. And then the second recommendation is the invitation of officers to come and discuss the PIR at their earliest availability. Does anybody want to propose? Thank you, Councillor Lee. Sorry, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Catanat. All in favour? Yep. Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you for the discussion. Sorry, we are still on the work programme. We've just we've got we've got Keir Mather online, so I'm just working through quickly trying to get he needs to be off by a certain point. So still on the work programme. Does anybody have any other issues to raise on the work programme?
Yeah, just quickly, I'd like to add to the work programme urgently housing, council housing. It's an absolute disgrace. We've got up to 400 void properties in Selby and Harrogate. We've got 601 people who've registered as homelessness in the last 2 years, and we've got empty homes sitting in Selby, in Tadcaster, and every other community in the district. And some of them have been empty for 2 years. We've got one, I think it's in Birkin, that's been empty for 2 years, might be in Beale, and all they've done with it is put solar panels on the roof. And it's an absolute disgrace. And we should be discussing this because it's impacting our residents. They're just crap. Not the residents, the people who are dealing with it. So I think we should put that urgently on the next agenda.
Thank you, Councillor McCartney. At the executive meetings, actually, the other day, this was one of the issues that was raised, and we requested some information about the voids in our district and for officers to come and talk about housing. So I think we move that opportunity forward is that okay with you, David? So reach out to officers to come and present and discuss that at the earliest opportunity. Are there any other work? We will extend that invitation.
Ask that they come and they come here. They don't do it on that thing. That they physically get their ass into this building.
We will request in-person officers, not remote officers. Thank you. Any other comments on the work programme, members? So if members are okay, we've got Keir Mather online. So could I just ask if anybody is happy for me to move item 7 just before item 6 so that we can have the opportunity to speak to Keir Mather. Happy to move that. Thank you. Thank you, Keir. I'm really sorry to keep you waiting there. It's obviously a big old robust debate here today. So I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and it wouldn't be an ACC meeting if we weren't having a robust debate. So it's glad to hear that that's carrying on in my absence. And I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person today, but I did just want to use this as an opportunity to update you on the work that myself and my office are undertaking in the constituency, as well as opening up to any kind of specific comments or questions that people might have. The first thing I'd also like to do is congratulate you, Councillor Poskett, on your election as chair. And also at this moment, just to pay a very brief tribute to former councillor John Duggan. And it was an absolute privilege to attend the celebration of his life. But I'm sure that everyone's thoughts here today are very much with his family and kind of remembering his legacy and all of the work he did for the Selby district. I'm going to be attending the extraordinary meeting of the ACC next month, where I'll set out some of the work that we're doing on road safety, especially as it relates to Rickle and the A19. But more broadly, that kind of leads me on to another recent change, and that's that in responding to any kind of things related to transport or transportation, I'll obviously be doing so in my capacity as a constituency MP, but I'm extremely pleased to say that I've been offered a role in the Department for Transport, taking up a brief related to maritime and aviation. It's an enormous privilege, but my primary responsibility remains serving as Selby's Member of Parliament and making sure that all 75,000 people across the constituency have a full-time MP who's working incredibly hard on their behalf and fighting for those local campaigns, which I've been focusing on since my election in 2023. So just to link through to some of those campaigns and give you a brief update on the SEND school for the Selby area, We've had really positive news about a contract award being reached, and we're confident that work is going to begin on the site in the coming weeks. The currently expected timeline for opening is in 2027, and we're hoping that this will be in Easter rather than September. We've received assurances that the contractor is going to be communicating frequently with local residents in Osgerby, and we are aware of also the purchase of the Holy Family site by an educational trust which specialises in providing independent SEM provision. This is at an extremely early stage, and I don't have further details at the moment, but I'm seeking a meeting with the providers to learn more. On top of this, we also held a recent roundtable with local stakeholders ahead of the government's broader programme of SEND reforms, and we fed those outcomes back into the Secretary of State for Education. On the subject of public transportation, I can have some very good news, which I can bring directly to you all at the ACC, and that's that following extensive engagement with Arriva on the Leeds Road bus service, I can now confirm that they are bringing that service back, and it will run 4 times a day to the residents who need it on Leeds Road, which is obviously an enormous point of relief for the residents there, but also to meeting our broader kind of connectivity aims across Selby. And for me, it's a real point of happiness that we were able to get over the line in that regard with Arriva. We continue to have positive meetings with Arriva and North Yorkshire Council. We have seen a doubling of the service between Selby and Leeds, and we can continue to kind of push for wherever councillors identify that there are gaps in provision in their local areas to make sure that we're working to connect our rural villages, both to Selby town itself, but also to Yorkshire more broadly. On the issue of mobile signal, we're making very good progress on improving mobile signal in Selby after what has been pretty much a year of constant campaigning and advocacy. Vodafone have made improvements with their customers, which we should now be seeing, and we can expect further improvements now that they've undergone their merger with Three. Virgin Media O2 have also put a plan in place for improvements, and they're soon to put a planning application in for a new mast near the canal in Selby, and I'm happy to share details if any members wish to email me. The office is currently running a call for information from constituents in relation to how they're experiencing phone signal issues. So I'm grateful for any help circulating this for councillors present in the room today. So in sum on that issue, we're holding operators to account, advocating with government ministers and working with Ofcom to tackle this really important issue. Just to finish very broadly on the work that the government is doing and how it intersects with our work locally, we've made some really important progress on a Hillsborough law, a duty of candour law, which is going to have a big impact, not only in relation to the Hillsborough families, but in regard to kind of how, I suppose, working class people interact with the state. And it's an enormous step forward. The Employment Rights Bill has also made its way through Parliament this week, which will significantly increase protections for people at work. I've continued to work with the council leadership as local government funding formulas are considered in Westminster, and SEND reforms are very much on the horizon. The office is also holding really regular meetings with North Yorkshire representatives on the Gateway project, and we welcome that this is set to commence in the next month or two. We're also keen to see a crossing of Borshy Road made easier as part of the project, and we've been liaising with North Yorkshire on that particular issue as well. I'm sorry for going through it such a canter, but I just wanted to give you the fullest breadth to understand the work that we're undergoing as part of the office. But as usual, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come and speak to the ACC. Very keen to answer any questions that you have, and very much welcome the scrutiny that you're able to provide as representatives of your ward constituents. I hope that we're able to take forward a lot of this work together, and I'm pleased to say that kind of irrespective of party or stripe, I've got a really good relationship with the councillors in this room, and very much want it to continue so that we can continue to make a difference on behalf of local people in the Selby district. So thank you for listening, and I'm very happy to respond to any comments or questions that you might have.
Thank you, Keir. We like some positive news. And you okay for a few minutes to take some questions?
Yep, I've got about 10 minutes, if that's okay.
Oh, perfect. Oh, we're doing okay then. Do any members have any questions for Keir? Oh, last minute, Councillor Jordan.
I'll ask one then. Yeah, yes. Good afternoon, Keir. Thank you for joining us. Mine's more a national thing, or certainly a Yorkshire thing, but I'll mention it now. I've emailed you about from MAG, on behalf of MAG, Motorcycle Action Group, we want to see some sort of understanding about where motorcycles fit in with the new transport policies that are emerging. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Mike. And so that doesn't sit within my brief at the Department for Transport. And of course, I can only kind of engage with the matter in my capacity as a constituency MP. But I'm happy to take forward any specific issues that you raise through your email, and in my constituency capacity, pass that through to the relevant minister for a response.
Yep.
So if you're not doing road, who is, please?
I believe roads sit with Minister Lightwood. Mike.
Councillor Lunn.
Thank you. Thank you for attending here. It's the bus going down Leeds Road. I assume it will be coming through Thorpe Willoughby. Is it part of the Leeds run through? Could we get by email some indication of what the actual route is and the timings? But thank you for helping us with this.
Yes, and thank you very much, Councillor. And I can see that my office manager, Owen, has put a comment in the chat that this is a standalone service and that it will be running up to Fox Lane in Thorpe Willoughby. I've just been made aware of the news, though, prior to coming on to speak with you today. So I'll certainly get fuller details and share them with each relevant councillor as soon as I'm able to. But I'm pleased you think that this is good news, and we can continue to work on improving the service together and making sure that we're engaging with Arriva properly to make sure that we iron out any kind of difficulties with the service as it's returned to residents on Leeds Road.
Any other members? Questions? No. Thank you so much, Kay. Could I also just take the opportunity to congratulate you on your elevation? It's nice to have representatives down there from our district, so congratulations.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Kia.
Thanks.
So we move on to the update from Sir Alex Shelbrooke, which was circulated to members. Does anybody have any questions that we would like to send on to Alec in response to that statement? I'm taking that as a no. Okay, so we'll go back to item 6 on the agenda. And Kate, if you would like to come forward, I'm so sorry for the wait, but thanks for your patience.
So, hello everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kate Exley and I'm Planning Policy and Place Officer at North Yorkshire Council. It's my colleague Natasha Durham, Delivery and Infrastructure Manager at North Yorkshire Council. And we're here to present item number 6 to Selby and Ainsty AC, which is in relation to the new settlement malt kiln adoption. Next slide, please. So apologies for those of you that know about malt kiln or have awareness, and I know that I remember some faces from Development Plan Committee a couple of weeks ago, but for the benefit of those that don't, I'll just give a bit of a background to it. So the new settlement malt kiln DPD has been progressed to implement policy DM4 of the adopted Harrogate District Local Plan, which identifies land in the Green Hammerton Cattle area as a broad area for growth during the plan period and beyond. It also establishes the principle for a new settlement there in addition to the broad amount of housing, which is at least 3,000 dwellings, employment and other development on site, education, health, retail, community and other services. So consequently, the DPD was drafted and submitted in this overall context. Adoption of the DPD will allow the council to give full weight to the policies and proposals within it, ensuring that Malt Kiln is developed in a comprehensive manner, ensuring that appropriate infrastructure is provided and that the vision for a zero carbon settlement is realised. Without the DPD, the council would not benefit from a plan-led approach to delivery of the new settlement, which risks our ability to address important issues, including tackling climate change through the detailed range of policies which have been developed to meet the priorities within our climate change strategy, ensuring that buildings, open space, blue and green infrastructure are designed to be attractive, inclusive and resilient, creating a community with a sustainable hierarchy of travel choices, and ensuring a positive relationship between Malt Kiln and nearby villages. And finally, securing essential infrastructure such as schools, health and public transport services. Next slide, please, David. So prior to submission of the DPD for the public examination, there were several stages of plan preparation which have already been established and approved by full council in February 2024, which includes the issues and options for a new settlement, draft policies and consultation. So I won't intend to revisit those, and I'll instead focus on the examination and its outcome. So the Secretary of State appointed an independent planning inspector to assess the soundness of the plan, and that is whether it has been prepared in accordance with legal and procedural requirements. A key stage of the examination included an examination in public at the Harrogate Civic Centre, which was conducted by the appointed planning inspector in September of 2024. Then subsequently, at the request of the inspector, the council provided a schedule of proposed main modifications to the submitted DPD, which we considered required to make the plan sound. A 6-week public consultation was then run on behalf of the inspector, which related to those proposed main modifications. Next slide, please. So the council received the inspector's final report on the examination on the 7th of August, which marks the end of the examination. The planning inspector's report concludes that, subject to his recommended main modifications, which can be found at Appendix B of the committee report, the DPD is sound, legally compliant and capable of adoption. Some of the key modifications to the DPD as a result of the examination include revising the indicative layout and boundary as shown on the updated policy map, which you can see up there. It's just the bottom right-hand image. Clarifying the master planning process in relation to development of the new settlement, clarifying how the priorities set by the climate change strategy will be implemented by the DPD, and ensuring that the infrastructure necessary for the delivery is provided in a clear and effective way. Just a note on the policy boundary. So the revision to the indicative framework and policy boundary has been explored in detail in the committee report. It was to facilitate an alternative vehicular access and the relocation of Johnson's nursery to facilitate earlier phases of the development to come through. Next slide, please. Just a note on public consultation and engagement. So it has been subject to extensive public engagement during each stage of plan preparation, with an opportunity for all to get involved. And this has helped shape the policies and proposals within the DPD. In relation to the post-submission engagement efforts, we've continued to encourage and facilitate public involvement, which includes proper notification and guidance at each milestone stage, which included publication of information on the council website, opportunities to be involved with the examination in public, which took place at the Harrogate Civic Centre. Interested parties and members of the public were informed of the inspector's matters, issues and questions which were to be discussed at the hearings. And as I said before, there was a formal public consultation on the main modifications. That was 6 weeks in February 2025. And an in-person meeting with the Malt Kiln Community Liaison Group to support the formal consultation. Next slide, please. So just a note on the recommendations. Essentially, we are proposing to executive that they recommend to full council that the new settlement and the accompanying policy map, incorporating the inspector's recommended main modifications, are adopted. I just want to note that the second recommendation is just to facilitate in case any main modifications were missed. It is a rather large document, and although Appendix C, which was attached to the report, we do think we have covered everything, it's essentially just in case we haven't. But that will only include factual updates, grammatical and formatting corrections. It wouldn't include any additional changes to the policies or the DPD. I think Natasha's just going to say a word on the letter we received, which you've all been.
Thank you.
Thank you. So members of the committee will have received a letter by Mr. Vendy on behalf of his clients. In his letter, he outlines a number of concerns relating to the sustainability appraisal, which has been carried out throughout preparation of the DPD and accompanied and is appended to the committee reports today. So in terms of a response to the letter, we've reviewed it as officers, and in summary, it is not considered that there is any merit in any of the arguments made. In terms of the deliverability of Maltkiln and the prospects for a successful compulsory purchase order, as detailed in the reports taken to executive and discussed during the examination in public, the council has received legal advice which suggests that there is a compelling case for compulsory purchase order if necessary, and therefore there is no error as such to be addressed within the officer report. The inspector has concluded that the unavailable land is a valid part of the overall allocation, and as such its inclusion within the new settlement remains justified. The issue of whether or not the sustainability appraisal was flawed and or should have included an option that did not include Mr. Vendy's client's land was again rehearsed during the examination in public and is addressed by the inspector in his report. The council believe that the sustainability appraisal process has been conducted satisfactorily and the independent inspector has agreed. Mr. Vendy and his client may take issue with the outcome of the examination in public and the findings outlined in the inspector's report. However, there is no evidence to suggest that the necessary processes for either the DPD preparation or the examination in public have not been followed fairly and correctly. Members are therefore advised there is nothing within this letter that alters the recommendation to adopt the DPD.
Thank you, Natasha and Kate. Do members have any questions? Councillor Prescos.
There we go. Just for clarity, the CPO, is it just one client's land that's covered by the CPO? Because the other day when we did this presentation, I thought you implied there was more than one person covered by the CPO, one landowner, more than one.
So the unavailable land, I believe there's a map appended to the committee committee report, so you can see the extent of that land there. Our land registry searches have shown that it's in a number of ownerships, but as outlined in the letter to the committee, we believe there is one spokesman on behalf of those landowners.
Councillor Wannican.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the officers for all the work you've done. You brought a document to the council, and I know it's taken years to get to this point. I'm not going to stress the point about whether it should go ahead or not. That's not the issue for me. The issue is that my understanding of having sat through 4 days of that public inquiry is that, and looking at the inspector's report, is that we haven't done enough to assess whether how suitable a reasonable alternative is by CPOing and the impact that would have if we weren't successful with that CPOing. And at what point in the development would a delay of CPOing impact on things like biodiversity, net gain, and other aspects, flooding, etc. So I'm really not comfortable about the recommendation, having now had something highlighted to us by one of the landowners. It is one of a few. So I, as it stands, I can't support the recommendation. I would like to see it's subject to us doing the analysis of what the impact would be on this development if our CPO process, which has been said time and time again, is going to happen to make it deliverable. What the impact would be if the CPO process wasn't successful. And I don't think we've addressed that issue. So just as a specific question to the officers, though, do you accept that the no dent land is a reasonable alternative given the owner's position? Because a reasonable alternative is within the report from the inspector. Do you accept it's a reasonable alternative?
So the council's position on delivery of the new settlement without the so-called unavailable land that's shown, say, on the map in the report, was outlined in the report to executive in December 2023, which concluded that the dent land was needed, and therefore the recommendation, therefore the decision was then taken by the executive for that in principle use of compulsory purchase if necessary. So that the position of the council was outlined in that report, and say as outlined in the report and in my response to the letter, that decision was taken on the basis of legal advice which said we had a compelling case.
Okay. So my question was, have you taken account of what scenario we would be in should we fail? There's no guarantee. You've got a compelling case, but there's no guarantee. So what if it fails?
Well, the DPD and the policies within it do take the settlement as a whole. And as I say, our starting point is that we do have that compelling case. That case as well, the weighting to that case increases with adoption of a policy framework such as the development plan document. Excuse me.
Right. Okay. I was tempted to put an alternative recommendation forward, but I'm looking in the room and thinking, am I going to get any support for that? So I think what I'll do is just have it noted that I have concerns and put it on record about my concerns. That we progress this without knowing what the outcome would be and the impact would be if we failed with CPO. I think it's not the way forward. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Warnock, and I think that's now noted. Councillor Shaw, right?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I can understand some members' concerns about what happens if, but within the scope of this development and the work that's been going on for several years, the authority needs to have the DPD done. I sat through the previous presentation, which was a lot longer, more detailed. The legal opinion that the council has taken is council's opinion, which reassured me more, because I'm sure we're all aware of the individual landowner who, whatever we do, would still challenge that we had not done it right. So I think we have to progress this forward on the understanding that we are probably going to have to go to a compulsory purchase order, but the officers, with council's opinion and advice, have put the council in the best possible place to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I support this proposal, and I'm on the development plan committee, so I have seen this presentation, more detailed presentation. And there's two things I questioned our solicitor when we had that presentation about this very point, and I was assured and satisfied that they've done all the background on this. So to try and not approve it or delay it based on the fact that it might run into difficulties because of this legal challenge, I think it would be foolish, considering that we're under pressure to build houses. As an authority, we've got massive targets that are being imposed upon us by the government, and this is going to hopefully contribute towards those targets. And I think the fact that it's been to the inspector and the officers have done the work, they've got it over the line, I think that's to be commended. So I'm happy with the proposals. I'm happy to propose that this committee endorses the report.
Thank you, members. Any other speakers on that subject? Councillor Prescott.
Thank you. You forgot me. Yeah, you did write me down. I saw you write me down.
Sorry, I got distracted.
No, don't worry. I'm easily forgotten. Just to go back to the landowner, Mr. Vendy states in his letter that he's representing one landowner. The other landowners, are they being represented by somebody else? Or you say multiple? I thought it was all just one landowner. Not to mention names.
No, and I think that there is information within the public domain on the land registry, but all of our conversations to date have been with Mr. Vendy's client, who has assured us that they are speaking on behalf of all of that land that is included within that unavailable land shown in the appendix.
And I'm happy to second the recommendation if you're looking for a seconder.
Councillor Warnock, were you indicating that you want to come back in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add some more to that answer that Natasha's given you, in that there are landowners that were going forward with this when this document was being developed, who have since, but not stated publicly, that they've changed their minds.
Thanks, Councillor Warnock. Okay, so we have two proposals in the recommendations. Councillor Lee, you have indicated that you are happy to propose. Can I just be clear, are we proposing, do you want me to read them both out again? There's two proposals. So the first proposal, nobody else wanted to speak on that matter, just double checking. Okay, so the first proposal is to propose to executive that they recommend to full council that the new settlement, Maltkiln, DPD and accompanying policy map incorporating the inspector's recommended main modifications are adopted. And the second proposal is to propose to executive that they recommend to full council that the corporate director of community development, in consultation with the executive member for open to business, be authorised to make further additional modifications to the documents. Those modifications may relate exclusively to factual updates, grammatical and formatting corrections. Which recommendation are you comfortable proposing, Councillor Lee?
Both.
And you're happy to second, Councillor Prescott? Could I have a show of hands, please? Sorry, show of hands in favour. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members.
Natasha, could I have a copy of the response you're sending back to the agents, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Kate and Natasha, and thank you for waiting for us. We'll try and get back on track now. Thank you. So we move on to item 8, which is the briefing paper with regards to the Selby community centres. We don't have a speaker on this matter, but have all members seen the paper? Would anybody like to? Oh, sorry, I apologise, David. Yeah, we do. We have a statement from Carl Doolan in response to the briefing document, and then I'll come to any questions.
Yes, unfortunately, the officer was unable to attend, so he has sent this statement. Members should note that an informal fact-finding exercise was carried out in January this year by a member of the tenant involvement team. This involved direct engagement with the various management committees and has helped to inform our approach today. Looking ahead, we intend to undertake a more detailed review of current usage as part of the individual options appraisal for each building. The findings from this review will be shared with members in due course. Members will also be aware from the contents of the report that these buildings are funded entirely by the housing revenue account. Therefore, any savings that may arise from this exercise will be recycled within that budget and directed towards the priorities identified in the housing improvement plan, ensuring our homes continue to be maintained to a high standard.
Does anybody have any comments to make? My comments on, so I've read the paper and I've gone through the paper. This item was brought to us by the officer. It wasn't something that we'd requested or was on the work programme. It was brought to us by the officer, in which case it's frustrating that the officer couldn't be there. I think there would be questions that some of us would like to ask. So thank you. Councillor Shawright.
Yeah, I mean, the officer said he'd had sort of discussions with various management committees. Could we know how many management committees, when they met, were local members informed of the so-called meetings taking place? Because I wasn't. The report itself it's got lots of words in it. Both myself, Mike Jordan and John McCartney sat on the Selby District Council review, which is attached to it, but I think that was 2019. And a lot's changed since then, but unfortunately not a lot's changed with the centres, that they should be better used and better managed than what they are. And when you try to, it says in the Constitution, used by, I think it's the elderly or senior citizens within the area, trying to get them to arrange themselves into a committee that meets some sort of management standards is difficult, to say the least. I know one that I'm involved with most that fall out every week, resign and then rejoin. But it's not a really good report, and I think the officers should have been here to answer some of the questions. And like, I know John's throwing his pencil and what have you, but they should be here if they want something on our agenda. And it's easier to question them than send it backwards and forwards. And it's not to do. I mean, the two women came down from North Yorkshire, the leaders here. You know, it's not too difficult.
Thank you, Councillor Short. I do agree, and on my notes I'd written were members informed, or just out of interest, how many members were aware of the January discussions? No. Yeah, Councillor McCartney next, and then Councillor Packham. Yeah.
I mean, this is absolutely disgusting. This officer is treating this council committee with complete and utter contempt. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. I've got a load of questions to ask him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's the worst. I think it's the worst report I've ever seen. And given we used to be on Selby Council, that is some damn going. It really is. My questions were, and I'm going to read them. Who will make the decision on the closure of the Eggborough Centre? Because it's the Eggborough one I'm interested in. Why did I only find out about the proposal for the Eggborough Centre when I got this agenda? Why couldn't you involve myself, Eggborough Parish Council and the residents early on to see how we could improve the usage of the centre? So it's not bothered. This is because it's Selby. And it's interesting when you read the rather nasty, useless report that nobody else has centres like this in Selby. We've got something that nobody else has got, so they're going to close them. It's about par for the course, isn't it? I mean, the centres are paid for by the housing revenue. The one in Eggborough, there's 28 old people's homes in the areas. And I find it's a bit rich for them to be whinging about the cost of these centres, which comes out of the housing revenue, when they're losing thousands and thousands of pounds every month because of the number of void council houses in the area. There's up to 600, possibly, 400 void houses, council houses in North Yorkshire. They're losing rent hand over fist every week. And then they're moaning about a little bit of money because it's in Selby. The use of the Eggborough Centre is a lot of informal use. It's the only building that North Yorkshire have got south of the River Aire. So it gets used by officers. If they're down there, the workmen repairing homes, it's toilet and coffee there. So it's a really important little building for them. Mary and I use it quite a lot because we've always got this problem about going to people's houses, and there's some people I don't really like and I don't want to go to the houses. So we tend to meet them there. And we actually had a meeting with 3 residents about antisocial behaviour in the Westfield Centre the other day. And I just think the worst bits in this report is the admission that the council have no idea what is going to happen to the building. It could be just boarded up. And then, of course, that's become an eyesore and a target for vandalism and graffiti. If they actually had a plan of what they were going to do with it, and it was thought through, and some intelligence had come to the fore, at least it would be useful, but it isn't. And I just fear they're going to board it up. And I come back to this, it's Selby. They don't give a toss about Selby. And because we've got something that nobody else has got, they're getting rid of it. They did that when they first took over North Yorkshire. We used to give out, can you remember, Selby Council gave out support for a rail train. You got a rail card from them. You could get a cheaper rail card. And because we were the only ones who had it, they scrapped it. And that tells you everything you need to know about. Look, it's Carl gone. Oh, what a shame.
Thank you, Councillor McCartney. I just would like to also point out that we're executives at the Cabinet meeting the other day. This was brought up and we discussed with Simon because it was new. This is a new item to most of us, so most of us weren't aware of this discussion in January. I do want to point out that there's no decisions being made. Simon was clear on that there were no decisions being made, so we have got the opportunity to hopefully inform what goes forward. And I think members' comments and we know these centres better than anyone. So yeah, but there's no decisions being made. Councillor Packham and then
that was a quick question. It's just I was going to say this, but I thought Carl had gone. Who's going to make the decision? Is it the executive or is it the executive member?
Carl, are you happy to answer that? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it was brought up at the Cabinet. We did discuss it, and Councillor Packham backed it about some further information. So I'll come to Councillor Packham, then Councillor Jordan, and then
Thanks, Chair. I did actually know about this probably about March time, only because I asked a question about what was happening about our community centres. I think the issue with the community centres is that during the time I've been a councillor in Sherburn, where we've got two, which is 20 odd years, 22 years, they've gradually deteriorated, with the exception of Harold Mills, which is shown here as being in really good condition. That's mainly because it burned down and they had to rebuild it. But apart from the other one is in a terrible state. There's never been good management. The reason that they don't seem to work at all for the community is because they're not managed properly. They're not managed at all, in fact. I think it says in there that no one really wants to take responsibility for them. I do hope that if we go forward and look at these to do something else with them, and I'm not sure what else we're going to do with them. There's all sorts of suggestions, but nothing concrete in there. I do hope that the first point that we do in going forward is to ask the communities what they want to do with them. That is the most important point. We've got a situation, and I can only speak for my division, but it probably exists elsewhere as well, where we don't have enough community space for the population that's grown in Sherburn. We've got two community centres which are constantly fully booked. We could do with more community space for general use by the community. Whether the town council will be prepared to look at that, I don't know. I feel they would. But I do hope that we don't, as John says, just board them up or just knock them down. They are an important community asset. And I find, funnily enough, I do agree that we can't have a situation where people in other parts of North Yorkshire are paying through this into the HRA. That's not realistic. But I do think that we need to look very carefully and make sure that these community assets, because that's what they are retained as community assets for the communities that they're situated in. And that would be my message to go back. And I would say that when this moves forward, members that have them in their divisions will want to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Packham. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. I don't have one in my division, stroke ward, but I was heavily involved with John and Steve, and we had a good look at all these. And as Councillor Bob Packham has alluded to, absolutely no management. After we had that review, we looked at them all. They promised to go away, did officers, and do some work and highlight and make better use because they're a community asset. What initially everybody thought was they could only be used by the residents around it on the housing estate, council housing estate, but in fact it was actually built for anyone in the community to use. But there was absolutely no advertising of that or any effort at all. Management just came up with a report and then it was forgotten. and it's been left to decline. And as Bob alluded to, one burnt down and had to be rebuilt. These are a huge asset in the Selby area, and I would like the council to step up and use them.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. I think we're in agreement that protection of community assets is key, and I think it's important that we're informing on whatever goes forward. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chairman. I think it's disappointing that the officer isn't here, really, because there's quite a few questions that really need to be answered, and I think he needs to come to a future meeting, and the committee's dissatisfaction at his absence expressed. But just on the issue of these centres and the way in which they're suffering from bad management, and you can see here in the appendix, you know, committees and chairman and all that nonsense. And I'm afraid it's like, you know, a lot of things like this may have worked in the past, but people aren't willing to step up, and with an aging cohort of users, they're definitely not going to be that interested in the running of them. So you need to find an alternative, and you know, really there wants to be some kind of organization like a community interest company authorized by the authority that can look at this as an asset and utilize it and expand its use, maintain the use for the older cohort, but then bring other things in. And I think obviously we've got a community interest company in Tadcaster, and I'm sure there are others, but that's the way it needs to go. You need having 10 people on a committee, that's why these things fail over time. You need a concentrated team with a clear plan endorsed by the authority.
Good points, Councillor Lee. Councillor Warnock and then Councillor McCann.
Thank you. I've got a sense of frustration. I'm not going to talk about the issue, and shout me down if I'm wrong in interpreting this, is that this decision for this report was made yesterday, and the recommendation is a bizarre one, that this area committee is to note that it was. But why couldn't we had some input as a committee in advance of the executive decision, so that the things we've discussed today could have been discussed then and maybe where possible incorporated? So I think it's a sense, my frustration is that it's just down to a lack of coordinating, and also maybe emphasising how some officers, maybe senior officers, view the role of this committee and how important it is or is not. Because, you know, I feel frustrated that we got an officer made a very simple report, basic report to us. And had he done a more comprehensive report, we maybe would have had less questions to ask. But it's a simple report, and we don't have the opportunity to question that report. So I think it's the whole attitude towards this committee that makes you wonder why you travel down from Calthorpe and Spofford. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Warnock. Councillor McCartney.
Just a suggestion. I mean, we used to have at the Eggborough Centre, the centres were built because the bungalows there were just 1-bedroom bungalows, so they couldn't. And there was a small kitchen, so they had a laundry room built in it. Now that laundry room has been converted to an office, and we did have an excellent area officer, whose name I sadly forgot, and she used to work there on a Thursday. And so that, no, it wasn't Babs, no, it was the other one, Yvonne, no. Anyway, okay, she lives, I know where she lives. She lives in Eggborough. I know her house is. But anyway, and she used to work there on every Thursday. And it meant residents could pop round and see her. And it was like a drop-in session. It was absolutely brilliant. And I used to go out for a coffee with her, and some residents would come in with a problem, and I would just pass them on to her, which was quite useful, isn't it? But I thought they could be used. The council could be using these buildings themselves. You know, we've got them. Let's get them open to the public, and let's get our officers working out of them.
Thank you, Councillor McCartney. No, I like it. Keep it up, John. Councillor Catnack.
Thank you very much. I thought I'd better put my 3 pence in. I don't have any centres in my division. However, a few months ago, I was involved with the Cunliffe Centre, and I was told that Postongate Surgery were actually going to take over the centre. And from the information I was given, it was for very good medical work, etc. However, Selby Talking Newsletter operated out of the Cunliffe Centre and needed to find a new home. So I'm glad to say that they have actually, if you like, moved in with Selby District Vision. Raffle tickets are available. And behave. And I then see in this report that Postongate isn't mentioned, but Beechtree is mentioned, and whatever was going to happen isn't going to happen. So in that case, they'll be Talking Newsletter needing to have moved out. So it would be nice if we know exactly who was going to do stuff and whether or not any of this is even correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Castanet. Councillor Jordan.
I'd like to propose a recommendation that nothing goes to the executive until we've had an officer here to talk and discuss this through with us properly.
That's a proposal from Councillor Jordan. I would have said the same myself, that I think actually moving forward we need to invite the officer here to discuss this further. So you're happy to propose an invitation to the officer. A seconder for. Sorry, do you want to come in before?
I wanted to suggest to Mike that there might be an amendment to that, that not only do we want the officer here to discuss it with us, but before it goes to executive with any recommendations, that there is consultation with communities.
Yes.
And I mean whole communities. Would you accept that?
Yes, I absolutely accept that.
And member engagement, yeah, thank you. Would you like to come in, Carl? Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I have a proposal from Councillor Jordan. Did anybody indicate to second that proposal? Councillor Packham, could I have a show of hands in favour? John's got 2. That's, I think, unanimous. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, members. Councillor Lee, you make a really good point. I work in a setting in Tadcaster that was a previous North Yorkshire building that was massively underused, and it sits under a CIC now that is a huge community benefit. So when you've got that level of investment or CICs involved, they are hugely beneficial to communities. So it would be good to have that discussion moving forward. But thank you. Let me see where I am now on my programme. So we've done work programme, haven't we? We've scooted about a bit, so I'll get back to where I am. We've done work programme, so we're on item 10. Any other items? There's nothing. The date of the next meeting is the extraordinary meeting on the 24th of October, which is to discuss road safety. Could I thank members of the public for attending, and you may now leave. Could I ask members to stay for the 2 items that, before you all disappear, there's 2 other items that we're going to just briefly go through once members of the public have left. Thank you so much for your attendance.